Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayostritva Pranamami Muhormuhu Namasvi Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukhasvarupaya Swamine Tapaharini.
মহারাজ পেজ নাম্বারটা বলবেন, পেজ নাম্বারটা
104.
ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে।
So we saw how Chandramani was so guileless and how she used to love the neighbor's children as her own. Because of the great experience which she had with that Shiva temple, now she was often talking about all that, and she was even discussing all this with her friends and others. Sridharam realized that her unreserved devotion to God and joyful self-surrender were making the simple-hearted Chandra more liberal and guileless than ever. See, this is the result of our devotion to God. No? If you become truly devoted to God, you will become more simple, more guileless, more innocent, more caring, more accommodating others. All these qualities will come because God is an embodiment of all this. Even if you see in the normal world also, if you start mixing intimately with somebody, you imbibe some of the qualities, good or bad, of that person. So that's why people always say about good company, satsang ki baat kyun karte hain? So because of that, she was guileless as ever. As a result, she could not mistrust anyone or consider anyone a stranger. But would worldly people, selfish by nature, properly appreciate her wonderful guileless? Of course not. People would all call her dull-witted or crazy, or she might be harshly criticized. Therefore, Sridharam looked for an opportunity to caution her. Not that already people were doing. People liked her very much. She was a very highly popular woman in the village because of her nature. But yet, Sridharam didn't want her to discuss all this with all and sundry. It's not only, ordinary things, the way we treat people and all, others would understand. But, to appreciate anything spiritual, one need to be spiritual. No, otherwise, supposing somebody shares with you his or her spiritual experience, will you be able to appreciate it unless you are spiritual? So quite often that will look very strange. Very recently, I'm just going through a life of Swami Ashokananji by Gargi, Sister Gargi. It's amazing how even in the next generation, somebody could be so stunningly spiritual. We have heard.
মহারাজ সিস্টার গার্গি মানে তো লুই বার্ক না? মেরি লুই বার্ক, তাই তো?
So this so she has written a wonderful life of this Swamiji. There, how from a very young age he had shown great signs of spirituality. He has had many experiences, many spiritual experiences, even before he came to the monastery. So, when such personalities, when you talk of such personalities, you are really amazed because we have heard about direct disciples being like that. Akurma Swami to jarur. So it's all quite possible. Even in later generations, there were such extraordinary spiritually illumined souls. She writes, when he comes to the lecture in San Francisco, the moment he enters the hall, very soon the hall would become kind of charged up. And at the end of the lecture, people would go completely in a different state of mind. That kind of an influence. So obviously, but no, to understand and appreciate all this, one should be spiritually inclined or spiritually oriented. One should be a great sadhaka. So गांव में ऐसे कहाँ कितनी लोग आपको मिल सकता है, इसलिए Sri Ram wanted to caution her. It's a generally they also say, even our elders also say, our spiritual experiences are not to be shared with anybody, only with your guru or somebody who is also a great sadhaka, someone in the same line. Otherwise, quite often, instead of being guided, you might be misguided. The opportunity soon arrived. The simple-hearted Chandra could not hide her thoughts from her husband. वो तो सबके पास ही बात करते थे. Why not with her own husband? Obviously, she would share. How could she withhold? She often confided in her friends. How could she withhold anything from someone who was by divine providence closer to her than anyone else in the world? At least that was the idea of husband and wife in those days. When Sridharam returned from Gaya, Chandradevi took every opportunity to relate to him her visions and experiences and whatever else had happened to her in his absence. One day she told him, "Listen, when you went to Gaya, one night I had a wonderful dream. I saw a luminous being lying on my bed. First I thought it was you. Then I realized that no human could have that kind of beauty. When I awoke, however, I felt that the being was still in the bed. The next moment I thought, does a God appear to a human like this? क्योंकि भगवान ऐसे के कोई मनुष्य के सामने ऐसे क्या हाजिर हो सकते हैं? That doubt came. Then it occurred to me that perhaps a wicked person has entered the room with evil intent, and the sound of his footsteps had caused my dream. The very thought frightened me. I immediately got up and lit the oil lamp, but I found no one in the room, and the door was bolted as before. Nevertheless, I passed the night sleepless and in fear. I thought that perhaps someone had entered the room by carefully opening the bolt, and then seeing me awake, ran away, again bolting the door as before. A very innocent village woman, no? They say, at daybreak, I sent for Dhani and Prasanna. After telling them the whole story, I asked, "What do you think about it? Did anyone truly enter my room? I have no enemies in the village. But the other day, I had a little quarrel with Madhu Yugi for a trifling matter. Is it possible that he entered my room secretly that way?" Then both of them laughed and scolded me, saying, "You silly woman, have you become senile? Why are you behaving strangely because of a dream? Think of what other people will say when they hear this story. They will spread rumors about you." गांव में तो जल्द से जल्द सब spread हो जाता था ना. So they were saying कि उनको कोई काम नहीं ना. People were a lot of time, so much of leisure. क्या करते? And it was a very close society. So किसी के मत बोलना, क्या सोचेंगे दूसरे के बारे ये सब बोलने में. So if you divulge this to anyone else, we will teach you a lesson. Listening to them, I thought perhaps it really was a dream. I decided not to mention it to anybody except you when you came back. Another day, I was standing in front of the Yogi Shiva temple and talking with Dhani. Suddenly, I saw a divine light emanating from the image of Shiva. It filled the temple and rushed towards me like a wave. Overwhelmed, I was about to tell about it, but suddenly the light engulfed me and entered my body. Stupefied with fear and wonder, I fell unconscious. Later, when I regained consciousness with Dhani's help, I told her my experience. At first, she was amazed, but then she said, "What an epileptic fit." From then on, I have had feelings that the light is still in my womb and that I am pregnant. When I mentioned this to Dhani and Prasanna, they scolded me and called me foolish, mad, and so on. They explained to me that the feeling that I was pregnant was either coming from a delusion or hypochondria, a kind of mental obsession, and they forbade me to disclose it to others. Well, what do you think about it? Did I have that vision by God's grace, or was it hypochondria? Even now, I feel that I am with child. Recalling his own dream at Gaya, Shudiram listened to Chandra's experiences and assured her that they were not the products of a disease. He then said, henceforth, do not speak about your visions or experiences to anyone except me. Do not worry. Know for certain that whatever Raghuveer shows you out of his mercy is for your good. While I was in Gaya, in a miraculous way, Gadadhar revealed to me that we would have another son. Chandra was heartened by the assurances of her godlike husband and did as he advised, depending fully on Raghuveer. 3 or 4 months after this conversation between Shudiram and Chandra, it became apparent to all that at the age of 45, Chandra had become pregnant again. When a woman becomes pregnant, invariably her beauty and grace increase, and this happened to Chandra also. विशेष रूप से गांव में हुई सब दिन में at that age people again bearing a child and all were not very uncommon. इस समय बचपन से सब तो कम उम्र में शादी हो जाता था. So everything by 25, 30, they all be full family and all. 45 साल में किसी को फिर बच्चे होना. So everything was very strange about them because it was a very divine dispensation. And they see Vishwas Usameta, I say if when the woman is carrying a child, it becomes more beauty and grace. Dani and the other village women remarked that this pregnancy made her more beautiful and graceful than had her previous ones. Observing Chandra's charm, some of the women gossiped and speculated. Look, this woman looks so beautiful. And this time she may die during delivery. Because it was unspeakable beauty on her person, face and other. If you read the whole thing, starting from that Sriram's dream in Gaya, etc., and before that, how he got the Raghuveer Sheela, it's very clear, the couple were of a very divine nature. नहीं तो भगवान किसी को घर जाके जन्म लेंगे. It cannot be an ordinary person. And also, it's not only that. Again and again, several times such hints are being given to God, through God sends to, in various ways, about the advent of something, about something about to happen very great, of extraordinary nature. So पहले तो बहुत तरीका संकेत भेजते रहते हैं. Apart from that, the people involved would have so many visions and experiences, so that their mind is always on an elevated plane. मान लीजिए आपका ऐसे कोई अच्छा कोई आप मंदिर में जाते हैं, कोई प्रोग्राम करते हैं, कुछ समय तक हम लोग का उसका इफेक्ट रहता है. But that is why in those olden days it was a habit when somebody is with a child, they would chant more, they will do more sutras, they will pray, they will do all that. So that was the main concern, and the whole house, they'll be treated differently, and they'll always be encouraged to do all that. So if that is for normal people, you can imagine how it would have been for people like Chandramani and others. And the constant visions, etc., kept their minds at a very, very highly elevated level. हमेशा ऐसे कोई आध्यात्मिक स्तर पर ही वो दोनों रह सके, ऐसी कुछ व्यवस्था भगवान कर रहे थे. During her pregnancy, Chandra's divine visions and spiritual experiences increased. जब तक नजदीक आते आते, so by the time the child is born, she'll be completely in that spiritual mood or atmosphere. It is said that during this time, she would see gods and goddesses daily. Sometimes she would smell a divine fragrance that emanated from their bodies and filled the room. Sometimes she would hear divine voices. It's also said that at this time, her motherly affection overflowed towards all gods and goddesses. Almost every day she would confide her visions and experiences to her husband and ask him why she was having them. Shri Ram would reassure her in many ways and advise her not to be afraid. We should relate an incident that took place during this period as we have heard it. See, विशेष रूप से इस समय, of course, Shri Ram was a highly धार्मिक person. उन्होंने अपना हर रोज संध्या गायत्री वगैरह, obviously he was into all that. But it seems Chandramani is being blessed with more and more visions, much more than Shri Ram himself, because she is going to be the direct conduit for the advent of the Lord. उनसे उनकी उधर से बगैर निकलेंगे. And not only that, probably it's all highly, people feel sickness, pain, suffering, and all that. Should elevate her mind so that she goes above all this and always stays in a very highly spiritual plane. Seems, it appears she was having constant visions and even gods and goddesses coming and talking to her. So that there is no idea, in no way the mind comes down to the level of the body. तो साधारण कोई चोटी होने में भी तो we constantly think of the body only. Imagine if a person is about to deliver and all that, how much the mind will be on the body. But here is something is being done so that the person is constantly in a very spiritually elevated mood constantly. One day the awestruck Chandra told her husband the following: "Listen, my dear, since I had the vision of light in front of the Shiva temple, I've been having innumerable visions of different gods and goddesses. I have never seen some of the forms, even in pictures. Today, God appeared riding on a swan. At first, I was frightened. Then my heart melted as I saw that his face had been scorched red by the sun." So, Devata koi hang se chढ़ के आ रहे. She has not seen even such a picture. ये नया कुछ लग रहा था. उनको देखे उनका पहले तो डर लगा था. Then she became very compassionate. सोचा इतना वो धूप में एकदम लाल हो गया था उनका चेहरा, मुंह. So उन्होंने बोला, called him and said, "Oh my little God, mounted on the swan, your face has become burnt by sun. In my house there is some cool soaked rice." पूरी दिन का बंगला में बहुत फेमस है, पंथा भात खाते हैं. पिछले दिन का सब जो बचता था, कोई मट्टी का जो वेसल में रख के पानी डाल देते हैं, अगले दिन सुबह वही नाश्ता लेते थे. Of course, it's in all parts of India. We have seen दक्षिण भारत में वैसा देखा. Please have some to cool yourself. Hearing my words, he smiled and vanished into thin air. I couldn't see him anymore. Likewise, I see many forms. I see those divine forms not only during worship or meditation, but frequently in my normal state. Sometimes I see them coming in human form and disappearing. Can you tell me why I see these forms? Is it some kind of disease? Sometimes I wonder whether I am possessed by the spirit of Gosai. So naturally, she was a very simple, gullible woman, no? Obviously, she was. That is why, see, आपके सामने भगवान भी आ जाए, सहन करना, उसकी पहचानना, साधन करना, ये सब सहज नहीं है. She was a good person, no doubt. She was dharmic, but she was not such a great साधका. वो तो दिन में 10 घंटा, 12 घंटा, 14 घंटा जैसे तपस्या करना ऐसे नहीं था ना. She was good. She was very dharmic. पति की ऐसे मान के चलती थी, सारे गांव की सहायता करती थी. Everything was all right. She was doing her पूजा पाठ सब करते. But even for her it was too much. ऐसे कोई मुहुर्मुह दर्शन होना, भगवान विभिन्न रूप से आके बातें करना. So obviously she was normally, if a person is very highly evolved, spiritually evolved, उनका कोई दर्शन पर्शन होने में बिल्कुल कोई यही नहीं है. There will not be any, absolutely no doubt, because spiritual experience, nature itself is swasamvedya. Only the person who is having it would know, and know it for certain. There won't be any need for such a person to ask anybody whether it is correct, or that means that person is not that spiritually. Bhagwan अपनी मर्जी से, अपनी कृपा से ये दोनों के माध्यम बनाए तो, no doubt. Obviously they were very dharmic of the highest order. But for Chandra Devi to have so many visions and so many experiences, etc., it means that she had not done so much of sadhana in that sense. So obviously, she was wondering, एक गांव के आदमी जैसे सोचते थे, वरना सुखलाल गोस्वामी की मृत्यु के बाद some calamities उनकी वही जगह पे हुआ. So सारे गांववासी सोचा Goswami or someone is trying to become a ghost and was living in the bakul tree in front of his house. उनकी जो बकुल का पेड़ उनका घर के सामने था, वहाँ वो निवास कर रहे, सोच रहे थे. इसीलिए किसी को ऐसे कोई हुआ तो कोई भगवान का दर्शन, सब बोल रहे अरे उसका कोई भूत पकड़ा. That was how they were treating. So suddenly also thought, ऐसे पहले बार बहुत बार सुना, ऐसा कुछ बोल रहे हैं क्या? Shri Ram, both he was a very calm and composed person, more balanced. Reminded her again and again about his own dream at Gaya and explained that this time as a result of great good fortune. क्योंकि मान लीजिए भगवान का जीवन में दर्शन करना है, भगवान लाभ करने में भी बहुत बड़े बड़े साधक कहते हैं भगवान की कृपा के बिना संभव नहीं. जितने भी आप करो, यू कैन नेवर से दैट आई हैव डन इनफ साधना टू हैव दर्शन. भगवान अपनी मर्जी से जिसका दर्शन देते हैं, जिसकी ये कृपा करते हैं, वही सब. इफ दैट इज सो, इवन फॉर ए दर्शन, भगवान अपना घर पे आ रहे हैं, इज कमिंग टू योर हाउस टू बी बोर्न एज ए चाइल्ड. इमेजिन कितनी सौभाग्य होने में संभव. एंड नेचुरली जस्ट बिकॉज somewhere or other, because there are so many other factors deciding all that. It's not just by freak or anything. कौन जगह में, किस समय, जगत के किस कारण से, किस अवस्था में, किसका क्या फायदा है, क्यों करना है. Why was he not born in South India and in Bengal? जहाँ भी जन्म ले सकते हैं, दक्षिण भारत में ले सकते हैं, उत्तर भारत में वो ले सकते हैं, क्यों बंगाल में हुआ? Not doing that successfully. All the great spiritual luminaries of that generation, they all came in Bengal. Thakur, Maha Swamiji, all the direct disciples. Why? ये सबका कुछ, there is a different idea, meaning, purpose which we cannot understand so easily. Obviously there must have it, because that was the place where the renaissance of religion was to take place. वही धर्म का जो पुनर्गठन, पुनर्स्थापन, क्योंकि धर्म संस्थापन के लिए भगवान आते हैं. सो उसके लिए कहाँ कुछ जगह भी चुनना है, कोई व्यक्ति भी चुनना है, परिसर भी चुनना है, सब कुछ मिलजुल के ऐसे आया इस जगह पे, ताकि यहाँ से अच्छे ढंग से वो संभव होगा. सो दैट वाज द आइडिया. सो इट वाज बिकॉज ऑफ हिज होली contact that she was having these visions. Chandra had absolute faith in her husband. So his comforting words filled her heart with supreme devotion. Strengthening herself with new vigor, she became free from anxiety. पति की बात में इतनी विश्वास करती थी. So she said yes. उन्होंने बोल दिया, now निश्चिंत हो गई. Time passed. Surrendering solely to Raghuveer, Siddharam and his noble wives spent their time in expectation of the great soul who was to be their son, whose advent filled their lives with heavenly devotion. ऐसे कोई व्यक्ति को जन्म लेना, भगवान के अपना घर पे आना, so they were, because they were very devoted and very pious, वही दोनों अपेक्षा करने लगे. Spring, the king of seasons, had arrived after fall and winter. The weather was neither cold nor hot, and all of creation pulsated with new life. It was the 6th day of the pleasant month of Phalgun. An upsurge of zeal, joy and love was visible among the people. कि भगवान आते समय कैसे, किस परिसर में, I don't think there can be a better season in Bengal to take birth. Just the advent of spring की पहले. The scriptures say that people are blissful because they have a particle of the bliss of Brahman inside. Does spring, having a little more of the divine bliss, bring so much joy everywhere in the world? Spring is considered wonderful everywhere. One spring day, Chandra was cooking food for Raghuveer. She was nearing the end of her pregnancy, and although she was experiencing celestial bliss in her heart, physically she was extremely exhausted. Suddenly she realized that physical condition was unpredictable. If the labor pains were to start right then, there would be no one at home who could prepare the Lord's offerings. What could be done? सोचो, उस समय तक हर रोज भगवान की सेवा करती रहती हैं, और उसी दिन भी अंतिम दिन तक ऐसे नहीं होने में क्या भगवान आ सकते हैं क्या? She was thinking not about her health. मेरे क्या होगा ऐसा नहीं है. मैं आज लेबर में चले जाऊं, भगवान का भोग कौन चढ़ाए, कौन, who will prepare, पकाने वाला कौन है. Then Khudiram assured her, saying, don't fear. He who is in a home would never enter a home at a time when the worship of Raghuveer would be disturbed. This is my firm conviction. Therefore, don't worry. Today we'll certainly be able to manage the service of the Lord. And from beginning tomorrow, I have already made different arrangements. I have asked Dhani to begin sleeping here tonight. माने उनका भी देखो, दोनों इतनी धार्मिक थे. They are so devoted to Raghuveer. He is not worried. उनकी क्या है, सब तो कितना दौड़ते हैं, भागते हैं. He said, नहीं नहीं आप करो, कुछ भी नहीं, आज कुछ नहीं होगा. Nothing will happen today. Because the one who is going to come will not come at a time to disturb Raghuveer's worship. See, this is भगवान की प्रति भक्ति, भगवान की प्रति श्रद्धा. हम लोग ना सब ठीक चलते हैं तब तक विश्वास करते हैं ना, थोड़ा इधर उधर होने में अरे क्या फायदा है. But you know, even in that concern, his wife was almost on the point of delivery. फिर भी कहते हैं आज तुम करो, कुछ नहीं होगा, मैं कल से दूसरी व्यवस्था करके रखा. इतनी भरोसा भगवान पर. At this, Chandra felt new energy and cheerfully continued her household duties. Everything happened as had been predicted. The noon and evening food offerings of Raghuveer were performed without disturbance. After supper, Shriram and Raghuveer, Ramkumar slept in one room. Then he came and lay in another room with Chandra. Apart from the shrine of Raghuveer, the household consists of 2 huts and a kitchen. In another small thatched shed, there was a husking machine on one side and a wood burning stove for boiling rice on the other, oven. Because there was no other place available, the shed was reserved as the delivery room. चिंता करो, इतना इतना सिंपल लाइफ, जो 3 हट्स, खड़ के घर और कुछ भी नहीं. And there, and also all the preparation, all the उस दिन का भोग सुबह का शाम का सब हो गया. मान लीजिए बाद में कुछ होने में तो कुछ नहीं कर पाते थे, but everything was done that day, completed. And then they went to rest. About 12 minutes before dawn, Chandra Devi felt the first labor pain. Then immediately escorted to the shed, and as soon as she lay down, she gave birth to a male child. After providing Chandra with the necessary help, Dhani turned her attention to the baby, but he had disappeared from where she had put him. Alarmed, Dhani turned up the flame of the oil lamp and searched the hut. She found that the baby was covered with blood and fluid, had slid over the floor, and was lying in the wood burning stove, besmeared with ashes. Nevertheless, the baby did not cry. Dhani then carefully lifted him up, washed him, and saw in the light of the lamp a wonderfully handsome child who looked as if he were 6 months. So you see, जन्म से ही वो छाई लगा लिया अपना शरीर में. So there's always a great debate whether Thakur was Vishnu avatar or Shiva avatar. क्योंकि श्री राम का तो वहाँ गया में ऐसे कोई स्वप्न हुआ, उसी से भगवान विष्णु बोला मैं आपका पुत्र रूप लेके जन्म लेंगे. But Chandramani had the Jugi Shiva temple में Shiva, light from Shiva entered her person, and that she was carrying. So this would continue, because later on also many of our the disciples and many others, they have seen both aspects in him. And later on, Mathur Babu saw once he was pacing up and down, and one side when he looked like he was Shiva, and when he came the other side it was Kali. But then right from birth he was causing these dual thoughts in our minds. उसी समय उन्होंने completely has besmeared himself with ashes. Completely was covered by ashes. So A few of Chandra's friends, including Prasanna and Smiman of the Laga family, had been summoned. When they arrived, Dhani told them the good news. At the auspicious and solemn moment before sunrise, Sri Ram's humble holy cottage reverberated with the sound of conch shells, proclaiming to the world the advent of a great soul. तो उस सब दिन के इसी प्रथा था. In anything auspicious means you have to शंख बजाना, शंख ध्वनि. Being well versed in the scriptures, Sri Ram checked the astrological signs of the newborn child and found that he had come into the world at a very auspicious moment. It was Wednesday, 6th Falgun, 1242 in the Bengali era, or Thursday, 18th February, 1836. The child was born 12 minutes before sunrise. हम लोग तो दिन सूर्योदय से गिनते हैं. So इसकी 12 सूर्योदय की 12 मिनट पहले उन्होंने जन्म लिया. The auspicious second lunar day of the bright fortnight, Falgun Dvitiya, Purva Bhadrapada had joined at the time of his birth, which created Siddhi Yoga, a fortunate astrological conjunction. The sun, moon, and Mercury had come together. I suppose that उनकी signs astrologically mila. Thus indicated that the child would have an extraordinary life. Again, the sage Parashara's astrological chart showed that the planets Rahu and Ketu were the highest point during child's birth. इतनी उच्च दशा में राहु और केतु मिला था. Anyway, later some distinguished astrologers studied the time of his birth and said to Shri Ram that the child had been born during an auspicious arrangement of the planets. Astrological science decisively concludes such a person will be profoundly religious, highly respected, will always be engaged in virtuous deeds. He will live in a temple surrounded by many disciples. He will establish a new religious order. He will be renowned all over the world as a great soul and be worshipped by the people as part of Narayana. ये इसकी उन्होंने जो एस्ट्रोलॉजर ने बताया समय के अनुसार दिख रहा है वो बहुत एक ऐसे कोई पवित्र लग्न में जन्म लिया और उसकी वो ज्योतिष शास्त्र के अनुसार उसी से महाराज शर्मा उद्धृत करके लिखते हैं कहाँ से मिला उनका. Such a person will be worshipped and respected. He will live in a temple. बहुत सारे डिसेबल्स होंगे और सारा पृथ्वी उनका नारायण रूप में उपासना करेंगे व मानेंगे. So everything is actually, see, even you know what our Sarat Maharaj had written, at that time he was not known all over the world. Now, कुछ साल ही हुआ था, कुछ लोग जानते थे, but धीरे धीरे सब कुछ ठीक लग रहा है. अभी तो सारा पृथ्वी उसके जानते हैं. Shri Ram's mind was filled with wonder. He realized with gratitude that the divine dream he had experienced in Gaya had actually come true. कि जो सपन हुआ था वो ठीक वो समझ पा रहे हैं. After performing the proper birth rites, Shri Ram named the child Shambhu Chandra according to his natal sign or nakshatra के अनुसार. लेकिन but to commemorate his wonderful dream in Gaya, he decided to call him publicly Gadadhar. वही नाम उनको हो गया था. तो उनका ज्योतिष के अनुसार जो नक्षत्र की पोजीशन के अनुसार शंभु चंद्र करके लिखा था, लेकिन it was never used. He was always called Gadadhar or in short Gadai. Here we present इनका हॉरोस्कोप भी यहाँ लिखा. Those who are experts वो देख सकते हैं. वो जैसे रामचंद्र कृष्ण शंकर चैतन्य ये सब अवतार की जैसे था उनका भी वैसे ही हॉरोस्कोप है. What was for those great souls, Thakur's horoscope also is just like that. Sri Ramakrishna was born in the year 1836 on the second day of the bright fortnight of the month when the sun was in the zodiac, early in the morning at about 5 a.m. His birth took place when it was Siddhi Yoga, going to the auspicious union of Shukla Dvitiya with Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. His natural star was Purva Bhadrapada, the 25th lunar month. In his Janma Lagna, that is the zodiac at the time of his birth, There was a conjunction of 3 planets, Sun, Moon and Mercury, etc. etc. बहुत सारे उन्होंने लिखा. The result of this is, according to Dhruva Samhita, that the man becomes the head of a religious movement, is virtuous, highly honored, and always engaged in doing virtuous deeds. So उन्हें पहले जो बोला नारायण रूप में उनका सब उपासना करेंगे, वो मानेंगे. Looking at the face of that beautiful child and hearing of his unique destiny, Shri Ram and Chandra considered themselves blessed. At the proper time, they performed ceremonies of naming the child, Namkaran, and of taking him out for the first time. Thereafter, they concentrated on raising the child with special care. See, as I said, naturally, on one hand, they were extremely happy, बहुत खुश थे, लेकिन मान लीजिए कोई ही साधारण लोग को तो कुछ नहीं है. मान लीजिए अब भगवान का हम लोग वैसे पूजा उपासना करते समय भी, those who are very devoted, they're extremely careful. बहुत बार मन में डर भी होता है कि क्या हम ठीक कर रहे हैं कि नहीं, कोई सेवा अपराध ना हो जाए. दैट इज इवन व्हेन यू डू पूजा एक्सेट्रा, जो नियम निष्ठा मान के चलते हैं करते हैं, हमेशा उन सबको मन में ही रहता है. दोस्त नहीं उनका चाहे पूजा हो रहा है, यहाँ गाना चल रहा है, खाना पीना भी चल रहा है, बातचीत भी चल रहा है, दैट इज ओके. बट दोज हु आर सीरियस, सिंसियर और डिवोटेड है, उनका पूजा में मान लीजिए आज की तो कितनी 1000, 50,000, 60,000, 1,00,000 लोग क्यों बुलंद दुर्गा पूजा देखने के लिए जाते. हर चीज इतना परफेक्ट, यू नॉट इमेजिन किस देवता के क्या फूल देना, किस समय देना, कैसे घंटी बजाना, क्या करना, कैसे आरती, एवरीथिंग. सो क्वाइट ऑफन पीपल आर अफ्रेड, इधर उधर थोड़ा होने में, सेवा अपराध होने में पाप को तो दंड मिलेगा. सो दैट इज व्हाट. सो इफ दैट इज सो, यू कैन इमेजिन देयर कंडीशन. भगवान स्वयं घर पे आके उपस्थित हो रहे. पहले तो उनका खुदराम का से दर्शन हुआ और चंद्रामणि को हुआ. उस समय से आरंभ करके जन्म तक असंख्य दर्शन, असंख्य उनके संकेत सब मिला था. उसकी बाद में भी जन्म होने के बाद, जन्म लगने से जो ज्योतिष शास्त्र के अनुसार जो आया, उसमें भी एकदम साफ साफ निकल रहा है. वो एक तरह भगवान की तुल्य है. बाद में सारे दुनिया उनको लॉर्ड नारायण की एक अंश मान के चलेंगे. सो ऑब्वियसली दे मस्ट हैव बीन एक्सट्रीमली एंग्जियस आल्सो. कैसे इसके संभालें, कैसे हम लोग. ऑफ कोर्स भगवान had already assured श्री राम, आप जैसे सेवा करोगे सोचो मत, मैं उसका ग्रहण कर लूंगा. Whatever way you serve, that's not a problem. I will accept it because it's very I have decided to come. क्योंकि देखिए श्री राम was only, भगवान उनके लिए माध्यम बनाया. लेकिन इसके पहले उस जगह पे भी कैसे एक अवतार जन्म लेते हैं, बाद में किसी समय तो यहाँ भी महाराज चर्चा करेंगे. सो पृथ्वी में ऐसे कोई संदर्भ में जहाँ अधर्म की बढ़त दिखा जाता है, when they see the ascendancy of adharma and the going down of dharma, उस समय ऐसे समय समय पर. So that's why the Bhagavad Purana also talks of so many avatars. Look up हिंदू धर्म की परंपरा में भी रामचंद्र की अवतार, कृष्ण की अवतार, बुद्ध, चैतन्य, बहुत सारे अवतार की बात है. So again, it was felt appropriate by God that it was need for the advent of such a person, because the Hinduism was slowly going down and down and down. And even in Hinduism itself, people are trying to bring in Christian ideas. The Keshavchandras and others in Brahma Samaj, they were thinking that no, the old ideas of Upanishad, etc., etc., ये सब कोई चलेगा नहीं है, अब नया कुछ करना चाहिए. So they were trying to bring about reform and introducing many of those elements into Hinduism. And in general, people are also losing faith in God and other pursuits. Religion ऐसे ही कोई क्षीण दशा प्राप्त कर लिया था. So that was considered the right time. So भगवान ऐसे कोई कारण से, then because Shri Ram did not do tapasya and asked आप मेरी पुत्री के रूप में जन्म लो, उन्होंने तो ऐसे मांगा नहीं है. It was not his prayer or tapasya or anything. He was doing a very dharmic life. इसलिए वहां भी कोई स्वार्थ के अनुसार भगवान नहीं आए, निस्वार्थ से, अपना मर्जी से. क्यों? उन्होंने सोचा दिस इज द टाइम फॉर द एडवेंट ऑफ द लॉर्ड अगेन ऑन अर्थ. इसीलिए ऐसे कोई उत्तम माध्यम सोच के उन सबको जीवन में भी उस समय से, उस दिन से जन्म तक इतनी पवित्र भाव ला दिया. That became their total uh, uh, total involvement was only with that kind of darshanas and talking about all that, discussing them. And then actually when the actual birth happened, it was very clear that it was very, very different and is going to be a extraordinary personality. Because then we go to Gadadhar's childhood, और कैसे उन्हें बचपन से अपना पिता का उन्होंने he lost his father at a very young age. All this we can take up next time. We have दूसरे भी काम है. But of course, I started this Google Meet because of course there is not much to ask now. We are only reading at the mere details. So when we come to the discussion portion, Sharat Maharaj is very elaborately discussed in many places. He himself has raised doubts. He himself has answered. पूर्व पक्ष होके वो खुद ही बहुत सारे प्रश्न उन्होंने रखा, जवाब भी दिया. When we go to those sections, probably we'll have a lot more to discuss and talk about. Because if anyone, those who are online, if they want to ask anything, they can ask. Otherwise, we say Shanti Shanti and close this class because we have some other program here.
Well, it was on Wednesday or Thursday?
बुधवार.
Thursday भी आया है.
हाँ?
Thursday mention किया है.
Early in the morning, birth took place, Janmalagana, etc. Ascendancy. Second day, early in the month, 18th February. 18th February तो ठीक है. Normally, I have always heard Budhvar as Thakurvar.
It is mentioned Wednesday, but Thursday mentioned Thursday is also.
नहीं नहीं Wednesday कहाँ Thursday मिला?
देखो just 3-4 लाइनें बात हो रही हैं.
It was Wednesday in Bengali era or Thursday 18th February 18th, I don't know. See, that is because, according to Hindu calendar, the day begins at sunrise, whereas according to the Gregorian calendar, it begins at midnight. That may be the reason, I don't know. So, according to the Bengali era, it was Wednesday, Chai Fargo.
And Thursday,
He's saying 18th February, I think, because of this calculation, because the Gregorian era and our type of calculation. ठीक है. ओम शांति 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 हरि ओम तत्सत. श्री राम कृष्ण अर्पणमस्तु. आप सभी देखिए आप, so that you can participate and can ask questions etc.